I want to stay around that theme of being the first to, because I would argue all of us here are probably the first to have financial education, to be financial literate. Even through the experiences that you've lived, you gain education.
Absolutely.
And I feel like the series is at bare minimum has started the conversation. I've gotten calls even yesterday. A young man was asking me about his how he's even helped get his credit score up to get a car that he was trying to get. As we start this journey for, well, a lot of Gen Z, Gen Alpha are starting the journey, what piece of advice would you both kind of recommend to help them start, to begin, right? Because Stan, like you even mentioned, you didn't have it, but now your daughter does, right? But there's so many parents that don't have it and their kids are trying to learn it. What would be that first piece of advice, obviously from your lived experience and obviously what you're doing professionally, for that next generation to get started on this journey of credit?
Yeah, I mean, I think like, with everything else in life, credit is a tool, and it's a tool that helps you build the foundation. So without, you know, leveraging that tool, you'll have an uneven foundation. I mean, that's just the reality of it. When I think about, growing up and, swiping a debit card and just being excited to have a debit card and not realizing that like I'm not getting anything back from this, right? But now, like, again, keep using my kids as an example because I'm able to give them insight that I didn't necessarily have. You know what I mean? So, even just kind of the idea of cash backing, right? Every time, my daughter uses her card, she's getting cash back. And she's, again, establishing, you know, uh, a use of credit that in the long run will be something that she benefits from versus just leveraging cash in a very loose way. And I think like, the reality back to your question in terms of how do you or what piece of advice I would give is the same way, our youth, you know, they're very good at learning languages, right? I look at social media as a language, I look at emojis as a language. They need to learn the language of financial literacy, right? Like they need to be fluent in finance. And it's not as hard as they may think, right? One of the things that, as we were thinking about how we would approach this campaign was, we realized that there was an insight that, you know, Gen Z is really not necessarily fans of credit. And our goal was to help them understand, almost give them a nudge in terms of it's not something to be afraid of, it's something to learn. That way you can utilize it correctly.
D, I just want to say, if you have a space one, obviously you do live through the experience.
Yes, I've lived through the experience. I'm still fully in the middle of it. But I feel like I have a great understanding of how to start because I had to start late. And I had to start sort of on my own. I didn't really have any clear entry point. I just knew that it was sort of that time when things just didn't make sense to handle them, with cash. Because I had become tired of being, I guess, not seeing anything as a result. It's like when you're doing everything right and you're just not getting anywhere further down closer to your goal. And I realized it was because I was trying to be quote unquote a concept of good, which meant only spending the money that I earned. And I think also realizing at some point that the business infrastructure shouldn't be completely reliant on my money. So, for example, one time we did a party, and this is a really great pop cultural reference for people, because recently I was asked to be in a documentary and I chose not to be in it because I didn't like the way it all played out, right? And it was for the brand Telfar. But there's a flyer, right, that says all proceeds of this party will be donated to collection SS whatever. So as a kid, I'm trying to pay for a clothing collection. Had I had the knowledge that I have now, I would have made that a company and I would have made a contract and I would have gone to the bank and I would have said, I've been doing these parties. We work with these kinds of artists and creatives. We need $5,000. And I would have given him the money and I would have said, okay, this now doesn't have to be a community effort that is all like, let's be good people and help our friends. This can be a business. This is a business. And so I say that to say that when you're building credit, you're sharing the responsibility. It's not like you don't have the money. We know you have the money, you have a job, right? That's why you even get to think about these things, because you need money in order to pay the credit card at the end of the day. But everything you do, should you recognize and respect yourself as a business, which you have to respect yourself as a business in America. America's a business. We are all part of a business. We need the money and we need the transactions in order to formally move through the business in a healthy way. Look at what you're doing and figure out how to share that responsibility with someone else. Even if at the end of the day, you're going to pay that money back in terms of your payment to the credit card. And I say that because I chose not to be in the documentary because I just didn't like what happened when they actually made money and they moved forward and they started having the budgets. And, I used to have to DJ at White Castle when they had a partnership with White Castle. And I was next to the chicken frying tray DJing for $300 and the party was packed and it was top of the headlines. And then when you made money, you didn't call me. So I don't want to be here representing you anymore.